No way this is happening, as multiple insiders are still linking the Vikings to Aaron Rodgers with stunning details when it seemed like the keys were given to JJ McCarthy for next season. And the Vikings make another comeback signing, bringing back someone that fans are fired up about. We're going to be breaking down all of that in this episode of Vikings Digest, so first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any and all updates surrounding the Vikings as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. With that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Rodgers still linked to the Vikings. So the first one that we're going to look at here is when Tom Pelissero was on the Rich Eisen show and he was asked about it. He was saying, I would not say at this point, Rich, I cannot definitively tell you that they're out, but I would also not say that they are in. The idea that they're negotiating with Aaron Rodgers or actively trying to bring him in is overstated. Let's put it that way. But then you have Diana Rossini coming out saying as well, here's what you need to know. The Vikings are having discussions about what they want to do at quarterback and if they want Rodgers. Rodgers is giving them time and waiting to hear from Minnesota. The Vikings have yet to make a decision. We all wait. Now, Diana Rossini, she comes from The Athletic, and a lot of local media in The Athletic are the only ones that are really running with this narrative that the Vikings are still linked to Aaron Rodgers. So sources that are a bit closer to the team are the ones that are getting these reports, but she also was on the Scoop City podcast following up on it. If you guys want to pause it and take a read here, if not, I'll read it here for you as well, saying the Giants are waiting, the Steelers are waiting, and then with all this happening, the Vikings are having meetings and conversations about what adding Rodgers would look like. Because they've got a lot of hurdles here, this is not an easy decision at all if you're the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't want to pay Sam Darnold the kind of money that we saw him get with, it says the Colts, but it was the Seahawks, thinking, okay, now we got to get a veteran quarterback. Who's out there? Well, Aaron Rodgers is out there, but Aaron Rodgers is probably going to cost some. Aaron Rodgers is a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and there are many people within the Minnesota Vikings as well as the Steelers and the New York Giants, of course, who still think he can play at a really high level. So with that, what do you do? So the big thing here that I want to look at too is that the Giants, the Steelers, and in some cases the Browns are waiting because we know that Russell Wilson is another veteran quarterback floating around out there. The big thing I think with Rodgers is Minnesota has kind of already spent all the money that they can in free agency. Now, the new league year has officially kicked in, so they might have some extra money there to go and get him. But the key thing is you do need a veteran quarterback to be in a backup spot for JJ McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers, though, he's not going to want to go somewhere and be a backup. He's going to want to play. He's going to be a very expensive backup if you do bring him in. But the thing is, too, as well, is a lot of teams are waiting on these decisions. Seems like everything is revolving around Rodgers and waiting on his decision. But it seems like here where Diana Rossini is saying that, well, everyone's talking about Rodgers waiting for the decision. It's almost like Rodgers' decision is depending on what the Vikings want to do. So in turn, while everyone's talking about this is all Aaron Rodgers just centering for attention and all that, potentially it could be the Vikings being at a stalemate that's causing this delay in the Aaron Rodgers decision as far as what they're going to do. And in turn, it's screwing over teams like the Giants, the Steelers, and the Browns as well, because we know the Giants and the Steelers the Giants and the Browns are meeting with Russell Wilson. So they're probably one of those two teams probably going to go with him there. So if the Giants lose out on that, then you're going to have to see them go after Aaron Rodgers really, very hard. Then they're going to be in a war with the Steelers, the Vikings apparently, and as well with themselves trying to not price themselves out with it. So with this, Minnesota, I don't necessarily think that this is something they should be considering, even if they have the money to do it. I understand you want to have a veteran quarterback there in case JJ McCarthy gets hurt or isn't fully ready. You could have paid Daniel Jones that, but he didn't like the term that he was offered, so he went elsewhere and got his money. So as far as veteran quarterbacks that are out there, Russell Wilson could be another one where if he doesn't find a home, but he likely will with the Giants or with the Browns. So then Aaron Rodgers is probably the next best thing out there where you can bring him in on a one-year deal or things like that. But you don't want to pause JJ McCarthy for one more season. But there was another insider that was also reporting on this, and that was Mike Silver, also of The Athletic, on the Joe and Q podcast, saying that is really up to Kevin O'Connell and decision makers in the building when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. We believe that Rodgers' first choice is to play for the Vikings. This is something that they are strongly considering and are weighing. They do need another quarterback, but with a team built to win now, and obviously a great quarterback expert in O'Connell, the reigning coach of the year, one of the all-time great quarterbacks sitting out there with very exciting prospect, I think the situation is the Vikings are trying to decide whether that could go either way. The Vikings will decide if they want Rodgers. I think it's very likely that will happen. And then he did follow up even further, going that I believe they're still very high on JJ McCarthy. He lost a lot of weight last year. It was a rough intro to the NFL, but they're still really high on him, and to the point where other teams have kind of poked around wondering if he could be available, and that they pretty strongly rebuffed all of that. We're talking about one of the all-time great players in football. Their evaluation of him is, I think, a little higher than some fans who think he's over the hill. It's gone. He stinks. The Jets stunk. They think that the view of is a lot differently, as they do with a lot of the NFL talent evaluators, and that they're a team built to win now. So you can have your cake and eat it too. I don't know that it's enough to sway them to say, let's take the swing, and it could get really messy, but it's certainly something they're weighing pretty strongly, and I'm told it could really go either way at this point. So the Athletic, they're really coming out saying this could go either way for the Vikings. I think, me personally, like I just said, you don't go and get Rodgers. You've built this whole entire team to win around JJ McCarthy. Yeah, you're in a win now mode. I know Rodgers is too. He wants to go out with one more Super Bowl before he retires. And yeah, the Vikings, especially with the moves they've been making this offseason, they are the most appealing destination as well for him, for sure. He would be going with a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, an amazing offensive line, a phenomenal quarterback coach. But with JJ McCarthy, you're going to stunt his development so much, and you're going to give him so much confidence issues. This is a guy where he is seemingly being handed the keys to the car, saying, yeah, go wild, drive. This is your team. We're going to build around you for the future for these next 4 years, and then some when you're up for an extension. We want to make sure that we can do this for a long time. But if you bring in Rodgers, that's one more season that McCarthy isn't playing potentially. Or if you put Rodgers in for the first 4 to 6 weeks before JJ is fully healthy, I am okay with that, but then you have a possibility of, okay, if he does what Sam Darnold did, and I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers here, if he does what Darnold did last year and he's really rolling, how can you justify taking him out to put JJ McCarthy in? That was the reason why the Vikings didn't have a quarterback controversy last year, is because Darnold was balling without the risk of JJ McCarthy having to step in. The Vikings very well could have been in a situation like the Steelers were last season, where Justin Fields, he was rolling. They were 4-2. Were they convincing wins? Not necessarily, but they were winning football games. They don't ask how, they ask how many. Then they made that switch to Russell Wilson, seemed to have divided the locker room almost entirely, and now they're probably losing both those quarterbacks. So with Minnesota, you have a very exact situation like that if you bring in Aaron Rodgers. You avoided that situation last year with Sam Darnold because JJ was hurt, but if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, now you have that exact same drama all over again, but this time in tenfold exactly what Pittsburgh had. Pittsburgh, they're a team that has a lot of drama. They're basically like a soap opera over there. Minnesota, we're not that. We don't want the drama. We don't want anything like that. So yes, while it does make sense to bring in a quarterback who's won MVPs, who's won a Super Bowl, who is an all-time great, who is a future Hall of Famer, and could fulfill Brett Favre's destiny, it doesn't make sense for the Vikings to do that when considering the moves that they've made and how they've planned around JJ McCarthy for the future. And you don't want to hurt his confidence or his development in any way. But what do you guys think about this? I have a feeling I know how you guys are going to feel about it, because we've seen all the comments on every Aaron Rodgers video that we've done. Every time that it comes out, the Vikings are linked to it. We know how you guys are going to react. However, if the Vikings do end up signing him and he wins games, I know that that'll be a very different tune that you guys are singing. However, I don't think it'll happen. I really hope it doesn't. I'm with you guys as well. But this is a very unpredictable free agency. We've seen crazy things happen, and who knows? Maybe he's just an expensive backup, and then he's just there to fill in, and he's okay with being that role. But we shall see. Let us know how you guys feel down in the comments. That's going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is Eric Wilson returns. So the Vikings announced today that Eric Wilson did agree to terms coming back to Minnesota from the Green Bay Packers, back to the team who drafted him. And when with Minnesota, Wilson contributed on special teams and as a reserve as a rookie before going on to start 15 of 16 games in 2020, when he totaled career highs of 122 tackles, including one on special teams, 8 tackles for loss, 9 QB hits, 3 interceptions, 8 passes defended, and 2 fumble recoveries, all within a season. Tied a career high 3 sacks that season, as well as matching his 2019 category. But then after that, Minnesota did lose him for a little bit. He signed with Philadelphia in 2021, played 7 games for the Eagles before it was traded to Houston. He closed that season by playing in 7 games with the Texans. Then in 2022, returned to the NFC North, playing on primarily on special teams in his first 2 seasons with the Packers. Then started 12 of 17 games with the Packers last season, getting 72 tackles, 9 on special teams, 7 tackles for loss, 4 QB hits, 2 passes defended, interception, and a forced fumble with 2 sacks. So he's played 2,762 defensive snaps and 1,942 on special teams through his first 8 seasons. So this is a guy that Minnesota fans, they were happy to see him back, mainly because we don't have Pat Jones anymore, so we needed a guy at the depth position that can make plays on special teams and also fill in for any possible injuries that might pop up during the season. That's the biggest thing with Minnesota is everyone's talking about all these offseason free agency signings we've made. We've made some amazing ones. We brought in some absolute dogs. So if we're able to be fully healthy, we are absolutely Super Bowl contenders. No question about that. And JJ McCarthy's in the best possible position. And Minnesota will be dominant on both sides of the ball. However, this is the Minnesota Vikings. This is the NFL. Injuries are bound to happen. I'm hoping they don't. I'm not wishing any injuries on anybody. Obviously, as a Vikings fan, we've been through enough of those already. But if one of those things should happen, you want to make sure that you have a guy at that depth position that you can make sure can do that. I know Garrett Bradbury, we're probably going to be trading or someone else is going to sign him. However, I know he's going to be expensive, but I'm okay with having him as a backup center. I know it's a very expensive backup to have, but we saw what happened with Minnesota when Darrisaw went down. We had to go out and get Cam Robinson. We saw what happened when Brian O'Neill went down in the playoffs, how bad that offensive line went really fast. So I know it wouldn't be the most logical thing to do to keep Bradbury around as a backup. However, with offensive lines, with defensive lines, with linebackers, we see injuries pop up all the time that you want to make sure you're bolstered down at every depth position. And we've seen the Vikings do that at linebacker with bringing back Eric Wilson and also having him be able to make plays on special teams, because we've seen what he was able to do before in Minnesota. He created a lot of opportunities, and here's to him making even more for this Viking special teams unit where we can shift the momentum of games. But how do you guys feel about Eric Wilson coming back to the Minnesota Vikings? How hyped are you for this season overall? And what are you looking forward to most about the NFL draft coming up? I know a lot of you guys are wanting us to go after Cam Scatterbo. Malachi Starks is also out there. There's also a lot of other guys as well. Jahdae Barron as well too. So there's a lot of guys that are coming up in this draft that are going to be appealing for Minnesota to take late in that with that 24th pick. But what do you guys think about this offseason so far? What do you guys think of the things that Kwesi has done? Has he been cooking to your liking? Are you enjoying the meal he's serving? Now it's time to head to the NFL draft. But that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.